What's Smaller Than a Pygmy Shrew by Robert E. Wells. How small would you say that small really is? Is something you can hold in your hand like a blueberry small? How about a grain of sand? Yes, it's true we could call those things small, but in this book you'll find much, much smaller things. Things you cannot ordinarily see. Unless, of course, you look through a microscope. An ordinary microscope bends light rays in a way that makes objects appear larger than they really are. With this, you can see things you may not know existed. You can discover, for example, that many tiny creatures live inside a single water drop. But did you know that there is a world of things too small to be seen with an ordinary microscope? To see these things, you need to use a much more powerful instrument, an electron microscope, which uses electrons rather than light rays to scan images. This is the kind that many scientists use. The world of the very small is almost unbelievably tiny and hard to imagine. But it's quite real. In fact, it's just as real as a blueberry. Everyone knows you can stretch your mind by thinking big. Do you suppose it's also possible to stretch your mind by thinking small? This is a pygmy shrew. From the end of her nose to the tip of her tail, she's only about 3 inches long. If you were a pygmy shrew, you'd feel mighty small. Even some toadstools would be taller than you. If you happened to meet an elephant, you'd probably think you were the smallest thing in the universe. Compared to an elephant, the largest land mammal, she looks very small indeed. But pygmy shrew, you're not so small. Not compared to a ladybug. Ladybugs are a kind of beetle, and beetles are just one of the many kinds of insects. Pygmy shrews are insect eaters, but they prefer to leave ladybugs alone. They know that ladybugs have a bitter taste. If you were a ladybug, you'd certainly think you were awfully small. For you, a leaf floating in a tiny puddle would be like a boat in a lake. But ladybug, you're not so small. Not compared to the tiny creatures that live in those water drops on your leaf boat. In this water drop, there are 2 kinds of one-celled animals known as protozoa. Cells are tiny building blocks that make up living things. Most plants and animals, even the smaller ones, are made of many millions of cells. Our own bodies are made of trillions of cells. Here's a closer look at the protozoa. The ones that look like slippers with whiskers are paramecia. The ones that look like blobs are amoebas. The whiskers on the paramecia are called cilia. They are like paddles, which propel the paramecia through the water. An amoeba moves slowly about by pushing out a part of its body, then flowing into that extended part. Because of this, amoebas are always changing shape. Paramecia and amoebas are so small that you can barely see them without a microscope. But did you know that even smaller things live inside this drop of water? Yes, a tiny paramecium would be like a giant sea monster compared to bacteria. There are many kinds of bacteria. Some cause disease, but most are harmless to people. In fact, many are useful to us because they live inside our bodies and help digest our food. Like protozoa, bacteria are made up of just one cell, but a bacterium cell is smaller and simpler. Most bacteria are so small that thousands of them could fit on the dot of an eye. But even bacteria are made of smaller things called molecules. Wait, not so fast. Before we look at molecules, you have to realize how incredibly, astonishingly tiny they really are. If we took just one part of this bacterium and made it this size, a molecule inside it would still be just a speck. Living cells and most of the other things in our world are made of molecules. There are many kinds of molecules, and some are much bigger than others. To see even the biggest ones, scientists must use a very powerful, special kind of microscope. Since all living things contain water, a water molecule, the very tiniest particle of water, is one of the many kinds of molecules we would find in this bacterium. If we picked out just one water molecule and made it bigger, it might look something like this. A water molecule is one of the smallest molecules. It's so tiny that even in this microscopic bacterium, there would be many thousands of them. But what are those three round things that make up the water molecule? They're atoms. All molecules are made of atoms. There are about 100 kinds of atoms, and they combine in different ways to make molecules. When two hydrogen atoms combine with a larger oxygen atom, they make a water molecule like this. But even those tiny atoms are made up of smaller things. Tiny particles called electrons whirl around within the atom at about the speed of light, so they would appear as a blur, like a spinning fan blade. Electrons form the cloudy shells of atoms. The dot in the center is the nucleus, shown much bigger than it would really be. Like our universe, atoms are mostly empty space. If an atom were the size of a house, its nucleus would be tinier than a grain of sand. Here's a closer look at the nucleus of the oxygen atom. Now we can see it's made of even tinier particles. They're called protons and neutrons. The number of protons determines the kind of atom. The nucleus of an oxygen atom has 8 protons. It also has 8 neutrons. Neutrons help bond an atom's nucleus together. Protons and neutrons are made of still tinier particles called quarks, with 3 quarks making up each proton and neutron. Quarks are amazingly tiny that scientists cannot measure their exact size, but with special machines, they can figure out their weight. Is a quark, then, the lightest particle there is? No, it's not even close. Even though their sizes are too small to measure, a quark is known to be more than 600 times heavier than an electron. Electrons, protons, neutrons, and quarks, what an amazing assortment of tiny particles. They make up every atom, and atoms make up every physical substance. Everything that people make is made of atoms. Every car and every clock, every sink and every shoe, every boat and every ball. Everything in nature is made of atoms. Every grain of sand and every drop of water. Every tree and every flower. Every person, animal, meadow, and mountain. Even our world itself is made of atoms. So is every planet and every star, every comet and every asteroid, every moon and every meteor. In fact, every physical thing in this universe is made of atoms. Trillions and more trillions and countless more trillions of atoms. How many atoms do you suppose it took to make you, pygmy shrew?